This is so weird. Man's just here in my living room cooking in front of a... How do I start this? Yo, all right, let's see how this goes. This is my first ever YouTube video for the channel. And the purpose of this is to basically provide valuable information based on my experience to help those that are on a similar pathway or want to become a doctor or just curious to know what it's like being a doctor. I hope my experience can provide some beneficial knowledge. So the purpose of this video is talking about my experience as a foundation doctor in Wales from the year 2022 to 2024. And at the end, I'm going to say whether I recommend working in Wales as a foundation doctor based on my experience. And bear in mind, this is just my experience and it may not reflect everyone's experience working in Wales, but I just hope to share valuable information that might be of use as you go along. So as this is my first ever video for the YouTube channel, I would really appreciate if you could hit the like, subscribe, and if you really enjoy this content, to share it amongst other people that may find it useful as well. Let's get into it. So this is the Mansa Medic channel. My name is Dr. Mansouri. And I am currently an F4 doctor working in Wales as a locum with a particular emphasis in emergency medicine. Now, my long-term goal is to get into GP training and become a GP, but for now, I'm just gathering experience in various specialities, but my main focus right now is emergency medicine. So just a bit about me. I'm originally from London. Grew up, born, everything in London. I'm a Londoner through and through. I did my medical training at King's College London for 5 years from 2017 up until 2022, where I graduated, and now I have been working in Wales ever since. I actually chose Wales as my first choice when it came to selecting areas, and people ask me why. I'll explain a lot more detail in another video, but for now, let's get into how my experience has been in Wales. So right now, I'm in a town called Aberystwyth, which is literally in the middle of nowhere. Located on the far west coast of the Mid Wales region in the county of Cardiology. It's also known as the unofficial capital of Mid Wales. Now, why it is, I don't know. Maybe because it is the largest town in the county of Cardiology with a population of over 14,000 people based on the 2021 census. Maybe. But if you know, let me know in the comments below. So it's a nice town with a mixture of Welsh and English speaking people. Because people generally speak English as well, I've never found communication to be an issue. And if there is somebody that wants to speak Welsh, particularly, there's always somebody to translate. So communication has never been a factor. I know diolch, which means thank you, and croeso, which means welcome. And that's it. Anyways, so now I'm actually going to talk about the actual hospital. So Bronglais Hospital is a small district general hospital with roughly around 155 beds. Now that's quite small. It's actually one of the smallest district general hospitals in the whole of the UK. It was established in 1821, so it's been around for some time, but it's obviously gone through many changes over time. So as a foundation doctor, you would complete 3-4 monthly rotations covering a wide range of specialities, ranging from medicine, surgery, peds, emergency department, and general practice. Now, as it being a small hospital, there are quite a few specialities that aren't available here. So if there's a speciality that a patient requires that is not covered by Bronglais Hospital, we would generally be liaising with other hospitals to get expert advice. In severe cases, patients would be transferred from Bronglais to the specialities in other hospitals. So one of the biggest culture shocks coming from London to Aberystwyth was paper documentation. So here we still have to handwrite our documentation. We have to handwrite request forms if we want scans, for example. We used to handwrite for blood test requests, but now we've moved to electronic requests. And we also have to handwrite prescriptions. But there have been talks of making it more digital. It's gonna come eventually. At some point, we will move to electronic prescribing and documentation. When that will happen, I'm not sure. But let's get into it. So my first rotation was cardiology. Now, the word I would use for cardiology is intense. It was my first rotation and it was intense. But looking back, I'm happy I started with cardiology because it provided me the means to structure my clinical practice for the rest of the foundation years and up until this point. I learned so much in that rotation There are 3 consultants that are absolutely amazing, and it's a very well supported environment. Teaching is excellent. On average, I would be responsible for about 2 to 4 patients at a time, depending on staffing levels. And at the time, I thought the workload was manageable. However, it being my first rotation, I felt like a fish out of water. I felt like I was just learning and absorbing how it was to be like a foundation doctor. Going from student to actually working in the NHS was a huge learning curve. And starting in cardiology, yeah, I learned a lot of lessons, lots of ups and downs, we could say. But by the time I finished my rotation, yeah, I felt a lot more confident. Second rotation was general surgery. Now, this was a lot slower than cardiology, a lot less intense. But that doesn't take the value that I learned from general surgery, because the teaching and the team was also excellent. And if you're somebody that is interested in going into surgery, there are plenty of opportunities to get theatre time because it's not so competitive. In the sense that I've heard in busier cities, it's kind of like everyone's fighting to get into the theatres, but at Bronglais, you have a lot of opportunity to get the experience you need to build a surgical portfolio. So that's quite an advantage. My final rotation was in emergency medicine. Now, being an emergency medicine locum, it's no surprise that I found emergency medicine in my F1 as the best rotation for me. It was my favorite. And what I really liked about it was seeing patients from the start, initiating management, and also having the opportunity to follow up and see where the patients would end up, whether they go back to the GP or the ward. We have a system where we could follow up and track the patient's journey, and that was quite rewarding. During the day, it's well supported, and as an F1, you only do 9 to 5. Now, the downside of that is that you take a bit of a pay cut because you don't get on-calls or unsociable hour pay, but it's a very nice balance of work-life balance and good clinical exposure. Now, going into F2, my first rotation was general practice, which was perfect coming from A&E because there was quite some overlap between acute and chronic patients that you would see in both specialities. It was the perfect work-life balance. 9 to 5. In some cases, you'd finish early, sometimes 9 to 4:30, but it was perfect. You'd have a morning session from 9 o'clock till about 11:30, 12 o'clock, a 2 or 3 hour break depending on how early you'd finish, and then the next session would start at 2 o'clock up until 4 or 4:30, and it was just beautiful. In between, you could use that time to do admin, study, or just chill. Now, after each session, you would have a hot review with the GP where we go through all the cases that you saw that morning or that afternoon and talk about things that you found difficult or found interesting. And you would have that guidance from the GP as to what you did right, what you could improve on, and what steps you can take to develop your clinical skills and clinical acumen. Having said that, I felt like it was quite heavy on service provision. There was dedicated time for self-development, but the tutorials from the GPs were more focused on the GP trainees. On average, I would see anywhere from 8 to sometimes 12 patients in a day, which is not too bad. I had my own office with my own name, my own equipment. I didn't have to share any computers. Patients would come to see me. And going from the busy environment of the hospital, having to wait, chase for stuff. Yeah, it was just nice to have my own space and just see patients like clockwork in my own pace. So that was 4 months, and then I came back to the hospital to do respiratory medicine. And going from hospital to GP and back was a really nice experience to see the difference between primary and secondary care, and also to see the links and how both systems need each other. We're on the same team. We're on the same team. So that was a really nice experience. Coming back to the hospital, what I did appreciate was how fast I could get results and how I didn't have to wait if I made a request. For example, if I was at the GP and I asked for a patient to have an x-ray, they would have to wait a few days to get that x-ray. Whereas in the hospital, it would be the same day, maybe the next day at latest. The team were lovely and there was a lot of learning. However, not all the cases were respiratory cases, and it kind of felt like it was more of a general medicine / geriatric ward. You know what I mean? It's a small hospital, so sometimes beds needed to be occupied by patients that were in the corridor down in A&E, and they would just happen to end up in a respiratory ward with non-respiratory symptoms. Nonetheless, I really enjoyed my time in respiratory. Team were excellent, and I learned a lot, and I still developed my respiratory knowledge. Now, my last rotation in F2 was trauma and orthopedics. Yeah, that one. That one, hey, the busiest rotation ever. Ever. The busiest rotation ever. Before I continue, Dovey Bike Park, moist. So I did my trauma and orthopedics rotation last. So that was from April until August, right in the summer season where you'd have a lot of tourists coming to Aberystwyth. And Dovey Bike Park is a notorious mountain biking place that would bring a lot of injuries. And when you're on call, it's very hectic. It has the most number of patients in any department. If it wasn't for the fact that the team was so knowledgeable and so supportive, it would be even worse. But the team really help you to push through, and I really have to thank them for that. So if by chance anybody from the trauma and orthopedic team watching this, thank you a lot, because your support really helped me push through. And the busyness really teaches you the importance of time management, because you have to be fast, efficient, safe, knowledgeable, and applicable all at the same time whilst dealing with a large volume of patients. And by the end of the rotation, you do develop quick assessment skills, which can be quite vital in time-critical situations. I am not particularly interested in surgery, but when I did go to orthopedics, I loved every time in theatres because it was so interesting. So moving on to on-calls, they tend to be from 9 in the morning till 9:30 at night. And that's both for medical and surgical specialities. Now for medicine, you'd have your normal 9 to 5 jobs, which you'd do as normal. However, if you're bleeped for a medical emergency or a stroke call, you'd have to leave your job and go to attend to that particular scenario. And that's the same for surgery and trauma and orthopedics. The only difference is with surgery and trauma and orthopedics, you would attend trauma calls instead of medical emergency calls. Now with medicine, if you are the first on call for a night shift, you will be covering both the surgical and the medical wards. As an F2, you will be downstairs with the registrar in MAU taking new admissions and seeing acutely unwell patients that have been handed over from the day team. I found on-calls to be the best opportunity for learning. During the time, it felt like hell sometimes, I'm not gonna lie, particularly weekends, because they could be quite brutal. Both medicine or surgical specialities, weekend on-calls were quite difficult. But looking back, they really shape you as a doctor by putting you through hard situations and challenges that makes you more competent by the end of your foundation years. All right, so a couple of extra points. IT, dead. There's a small library that has a bunch of resources to help you for extra studying if you need it for exams or your portfolio or any general knowledge. There's a side room where you can go and chill. But yeah, I feel like even though it's small, it's compact and will give you everything you need in terms of extra research. There's a mess that's often used for social gatherings. You can watch films. There's a console there, read books, play games, all that stuff. And sometimes there's social activities organized by the mess where you tend to go to the beach or dinners or any other social gatherings. So there's quite a nice balance there. So with that in mind, would I recommend working at Bronglais? Drum roll, please. Yes, I would. I would say I've really enjoyed my experience here. I feel like I've learned a lot. And what solidifies that claim for me is I've worked in other hospitals, and in the beginning, I thought it would be quite daunting going from a small hospital to bigger hospitals. And I felt like the experience I was having at Bronglais may not have been adequate enough to work in bigger and bigger hospitals. But when I did locum away for the first time, I felt comfortable as I would ever. And that told me that the experience I got at Bronglais was quite beneficial. Yeah, I mean, it's a small hospital, but I feel like you feel like you're part of a team. With it being so small, you don't feel like you're a clog in the wheel, like, or you're just a part of a big machine in a big system, which is how I felt when I was training in London, and even when I've locumed in other bigger cities. I feel like very isolated. Now, there's pros and cons everywhere. I'm not saying it's perfect and not everybody is nice or easy to work with, but as a whole, I feel quite comfortable, and I feel like the team and the support and the sense of community really helps being a doctor being a bit more enjoyable. So if you made it this far into the video, I just want to say thank you so much. Let me know how you found this. Let me know if you have any suggestions of what kind of content you would like to see. I've got a whole bunch of ideas, so let's go on this journey together and see how this channel grows. But yeah, thank you so much for making it. And again, Like, share, subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you in part 2 where I'm going to be talking about life outside of work and what it's like to live in Aberystwyth in general. So thank you so much.